My name is Charline Caruthers. I was born in Fargo, Oklahoma, which is a little town west of Woodward. My parents moved to Edmond in 1928. My father was a policeman in Edmond when they had only 4 policemen, and I think now there's close to 200. I went to school at the Edmond schools. I had 3 brothers and 1 sister. I met my husband, Glenn Caruthers, at the Wide Awake Cafe on Broadway in Edmond, which was old 66 at the time. He had just returned from World War II, and we were married in 1946 and made our home in Edmond for some time, and then we had 2 daughters, Glenna Sue and Linda. I went to work for WKY-TV in April 6, 1953. I heard about the opening from a dear friend that worked at WKY, and I went to work as a receptionist and relieved on the switchboard, which was the old-time switchboard, which had the plug-ins. I took tours, and we had live shows at that time and met so many people. Ed Sullivan, Glenn Campbell, and many people. Some of our live shows were Tom Paxton, Chrissy Thomas, Danny Williams' show when he had the elderly people. And then in about 5 months, I was hired as a film editor, which I was trained on the job, and I went to work for Tiki Bawden. And at that time, they taught me the film industry, and we had live commercials, slide with copy, or film commercials. And I provided the film commercials, and also we had most of our shows in the late evening were film shows, and I edited those for breaks or for the time wise it was bought. And then in 1957, Tiki Bawden retired, and I was made supervisor of the department, and at that time it was film and copy. And we did the copy for all of the live commercials, live shows. And the announcers, the directors would come into the office and pull a copy. And I worked with the agencies in receiving the commercials, like Howard Newman, Patty Mize, the Runkle Company, Ackerman, Rice, and so many more. And at the time I first started in the Channel 9 wasn't even on the air, so it was really an interesting job. So we were all learning. The schedule was done by the traffic department, and near the end of the day they would come into our department, and we'd put the film commercials or the copy, whether it be copy with it, and then they would type the commercials, and then we had a person that would run the schedule, and it was delivered to the different parts. Also, we had live announcers that did the station breaks. In September of 1954, we started OU Playback, and I was the film editor at the time, and Johnny Shannon and Fred Wolf were the photographers, and they filmed the games. We edited the show. We had a stop frame between each play, which had to be removed, and then it also had to be timed out to the time period that the slot that the OU Playback. I also worked with Bud Wilkinson, Howard Newman, Joe Jerkins, and Monty Mann Sr. from Low Runkle, which they had Kerr-McGee, which sponsored the coaches show. And I was the only one, I believe, in the room that didn't smoke, and they smoked cigars, so it was always a smoke-filled room, which I didn't mind because my husband smoked anyway. And they were always so kind to me. When they started color for OU Playback, they had to take the film to Dallas to be processed because the station didn't have a color processor. So at that time, I started coming out around 10:30 at night and worked all night and until I had the film ready to go on the air. And sometimes, if the film was late, I was editing maybe the last quarter when it went on the air. And I edited that show until 1971. I worked with so many wonderful people over the years. When I first started, P.A. Sugg was manager. Then he left, and Hoyt Andres was manager, and he died suddenly. And Mr. Wellpop was manager, and he was there a short time, and then Norm Bagwell was a manager until 1978, and we lost Mr. Bagwell, and then Lee Allen Smith. So I worked with many different managers, program managers, Joe Jerkins, Bill Thrash, and I worked with Gene Allen, Bob Berry Sr., Jack Ogle, Jim Williams, Bob Thomas, and some of the directors and that I worked with, Billy Nix, which was a character in itself. And one of the stories about Billy Nix was we had a live show which was Foreman Scotty, and they had a lariat that they would put over children that had a birthday, and you would say, "Nix, oh Billy." And they got that by the director, which was Billy Nix. And later years, Billy came up to my department, and he helped edit movies that would go on the air. And he was a dear friend, and we lost him several years ago. Doris Riedrich was in the traffic department, and we were dear friends. Maxine Boatwright worked in the accounting department, and she also cooked on Danny Williams' show. And we went to many football games together. My husband's health was not good, so Maxine and I started going to football games together. And she died almost in my arms after a football game at Norman, after we had attended the game. I could go on and on about the wonderful people that I've worked with. Norm Bagwell, Lee Allen Smith, Joe Jerkins, Bill Thrash, and they are still dear friends. There was also Pete Richmond, which handled, later we would do videotape. We started out with 2-inch videotape, and then later 1-inch, and then beta, and so on, which since I have left. But I would even come out and change commercials on the weekend for agencies. Back then, we could change commercials within a few minutes. One Thanksgiving, Howard Newman called me and wanted to know if I could change an OG&E commercial for him. And I said certainly, and I went out and changed the commercial. And then he wrote a letter to Mr. Bagwell about me being available on Thanksgiving Day. In later years, the department went together with the traffic department, and so many changes in the. We did the logs. They typed the logs, then they went to key punch, and then we went to computer. So many changes over the years. Since I left WKY, I have been back every year working. I worked for a few years. I worked in the traffic department, but I decided I didn't want the pressure, so I help out on the switchboard when they need me. When I first started working in the film department, the news department was just about 4 people. The photographers did on the air work, and they would send me the film upstairs by a dumb waiter, and I would edit the film, splice the film, put it together for them, and within a few minutes have it back for them to go on the air. Sometimes it was upside down, backwards, so it was always a fast thing to do. We had a program manager when I first started to work in the film department. His name was Bob Olson, and we previewed all shows and all commercials before they went on the air. But something happened one time that a film wasn't just right when it went on the air, and Mr. Olson sent out a memo and said, preview all film that has something wrong with it. So we always got a laugh about that. We also had pages that picked up the commercials or delivered things to the different agencies. At that time, we had a page in the morning that worked in the mail room and one in the afternoon. And they were usually students at Central State College. And I still am in contact with several of those that worked in my office. I have always enjoyed working, but my days at WKY, KTVY, and KFAR were so much fun. Of course, it was work, but back in the WKY days, when it was new, it was just like one big happy family. In 1965, I joined AWRT, which was American Women in Radio and TV. This station sent me to 11 conventions, and I met so many people. I still have friends that I am in contact with, and also still belong to the organization, and I still attend some of the meetings. I enjoy going back and visiting with everyone, and will say they are always the most professional people that you could ever ask for.